search and rescue personnel are sharing disturbing missing persons cases within our national parks. And these aren't just people who go missing, these are individuals who go missing under bizarre, mysterious, and downright creepy circumstances. And as you're going to find out in today's episode, the truth is far stranger than you could ever imagine. Let's begin. Secrets of the Woods. Greetings, everyone. I'm a newcomer to posting here, but I believe my search and rescue team may have experienced a supernatural incident during our most recent mission. I wanted to share our story to gather some opinions and insights. A few weeks ago, we received a call to search for a missing hiker in a secluded wooded area. We reached our destination in the late afternoon, just as the sun began its descent behind the trees, creating elongated shadows. While we were unloading our gear from the trucks, I couldn't help but notice that Sadie, one of our canines, seemed unusually anxious and on edge. This behavior is quite unusual for her. She's a skilled SR dog and is always enthusiastic about getting to work, but she appeared reluctant to even leave the truck. After some gentle persuasion, we managed to get her out and handed her the scent article. However, she appeared preoccupied and continuously glanced towards the woods while emitting soft whimpers. We set off towards the hiker's most recent whereabouts to initiate our search. The atmosphere was eerily quiet, devoid of any signs of life. Even the usual chirping of birds was absent, which was highly unusual for that particular time of day. Even the dogs appeared restless, choosing to stay by our sides instead of venturing ahead as they usually do. Approximately halfway along the path, Sadie unexpectedly erupted into a frenzy of barking and swiftly disappeared from view. This was quite unusual, as she has never abruptly stopped a search like that before. We tried to get her attention, but she didn't acknowledge us. 2 colleagues were sent to locate her, while the rest of us carried on with the search. After a quarter of an hour, the 2 individuals came back, visibly disturbed and unsettled. They discovered Sadie in a small clearing, wandering in circles around a pile of rocks, emitting soft whimpers while keeping her tail tucked between her legs. When they approached her, she displayed an unexpected level of aggression and had to be restrained, which was highly unusual for her. They also mentioned experiencing a potent metallic scent in that clearing reminiscent of ozone, which had a disorienting effect on them. After gathering ourselves, securing the dogs, we made the decision to return to our search. The fading light and the eerie ambiance of those woods made it imperative to act swiftly. Sadie was visibly upset during the entire journey, and it took some effort to convince her to get into the truck. We conducted another search the following day with a fresh team of dogs, and were relieved to discover the lost hiker alive. Unfortunately, Sadie had to be left behind to avoid the possibility of her wandering off once more. I've been involved in search and rescue operations for more than 10 years, and that particular night was unlike anything I had ever encountered before. The dogs' reactions, the unsettling atmosphere in those woods, it all felt otherworldly to me. Even our team leader acknowledged that something seemed quite unusual. I'm considering cleansing my equipment, and I've also contacted a psychic who has experience with search and rescue teams in order to determine if we may have encountered anything out there, and if there are any measures we should take before going back to that location. Has anyone else encountered similar situations? I would greatly appreciate your insights on this matter. It makes me wonder if there are things that exist beyond our usual perception. Take care and stay safe. I was involved in a search and rescue operation to locate a hiker who had gone missing in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia. The landscape in that area is quite challenging, featuring rugged terrain, steep ravines, dense forest, and a variety of wildlife, including black bears and bobcats. It can be quite confusing if you stray from the designated paths. We divided into teams to cover a larger area. My partner and I ventured into a narrow gorge, thinking that the lost hiker may have taken refuge near the creek at the bottom. The descent was extremely challenging, as the ground was covered in unstable shale that constantly moved beneath your feet. The dense mountain laurel obstructed the view, making it difficult to see far into the distance. After traveling for a while, I suddenly heard a clear sound of wood knocking that reverberated off the cliffs. Knock, knock, knock. Hold on. Knock, knock, knock. It brought back memories of the supposed Bigfoot communication I had witnessed on those cable TV shows. I brushed it off, thinking it was probably just a woodpecker or some other creature. We continued to move, remaining vigilant for any indication of the individual who was unaccounted for. Once more, after a mere 10 minutes, it reappeared. Knock, knock, knock. Even closer now. There was a certain quality to it that sent shivers down my spine. I quickly glanced at my partner, but I did my best to brush it off. We had a task to complete. Shortly after, a terrifying scream echoed through the forest, originating from where the knocks were heard. The sound was a combination of a man's voice and the fierce roar of a wild creature. It is certainly not a bear or a bobcat. We both stood still, uncertain of our next move. Suddenly, a deafening noise echoed through the forest as an enormous object barreled towards us. The sound of trees cracking and underbrush snapping. That was sufficient for me. We quickly retreated, scrambling up the slope with surprising speed, desperately trying to escape the gorge by slipping and clawing our way out. I could sense a warm breath on my back, accompanied by grunting and stomping sounds right behind me. However, I didn't have the courage to turn around and see what it was. We kept running until we finally reached base camp, completely out of breath and filled with excitement. Nobody else mentioned anything out of the ordinary. We were unable to locate any sign of the hiker who went missing. I remained silent, not wanting to be seen as a crazy person. However, I am confident in what I heard outside, and it definitely did not sound normal. Even now, I can't help but feel a chill when I consider the unknown entities that could be lurking in those dark, unseen corners. Approximately half a year ago, my spouse embarked on a camping trip in the scenic mountains surrounding Asheville, North Carolina. We have previous experience with backcountry camping in that area, but this time we opted for a more adventurous route by choosing a less popular trail. Things were going really well in the beginning. The scenery was stunning, and we were truly escaping from the hustle and bustle of everyday life. However, on the third morning, I woke up feeling extremely queasy. I thought perhaps I was simply lacking fluids or had consumed something that didn't sit well with me. We resumed our hiking journey, but unfortunately, I had to come to a halt after a few hours. The feeling of nausea intensified until I could no longer suppress it. I barely managed to leave the trail in time before uncontrollably emptying my stomach of all the food I had consumed in the past week. My husband was quite worried and asked if I wanted to go back, but I thought I would feel better once I had gotten everything out of my system. Regrettably, that was not the situation. As time went on, my condition deteriorated further. I experienced symptoms such as fever, profuse sweating, extreme weakness, and delirium. We came to the realization that I must have caught some sort of illness or foodborne infection. My husband was well aware that we required assistance. but our trail maps indicated that we were still a considerable distance from the closest ranger station or road. That's when the confusion really started to set in. I started seeing bizarre forms and hearing unusual noises in the woods surrounding us. Once, I was absolutely convinced that I spotted a mysterious, human-like figure observing us from the edge of a cluster of trees, with its luminous eyes and gaunt facial features. I attempted to bring it to my husband's attention, but he was unable to perceive anything. He believed that my fever might have been causing me to hallucinate. I recall struggling to stay awake as my husband supported me and desperately searched for the path back to the starting point. The forest appeared indistinguishable, and my vivid illusions only added to our confusion, offering no guidance or clear route. After what seemed like an incredibly long period of confusion and illness, I finally caught a glimpse of lights shining through the trees, the first signs of human habitation we had encountered in several days. Afterward, my husband informed me that he had been tracking the sound of a nearby stream. This eventually led us to a road where a park ranger was able to contact an evacuation team. I was hospitalized for 3 days due to a severe bout of giardia. The entire experience felt like a nightmarish hallucination, except for those eerie glowing eyes in the forest that appeared incredibly lifelike. Likewise, we've encountered situations like this in the past. On a chilly winter night, many years ago, in the secluded mountains of western Montana, as we walked through the quiet, snowy forest, our headlamps creating long shadows on the frozen ground, something felt really unsettling. Soon enough, we stumbled upon an intriguing discovery: a set of peculiar footprints in the snow, unlike anything I had ever encountered. The footprints appeared to possess a peculiar combination of human and non-human characteristics, displaying an unusually shallow curve and toes that were spread apart. They ventured off the path and vanished into the maze of old fir trees. We continued along the strange path, venturing further into the darkness. There were moments when I thought I saw strange figures lurking in the shadows, disappearing as soon as I tried to look at them directly. We eventually reached a small clearing where we discovered the skier's frozen body, twisted in a horrifying manner with a look of terror frozen on their face. Surrounding the body were additional peculiar marks, as if some kind of ceremonial routine had taken place near the deceased. The eerie connections between numerous unsolved cases of missing hikers and woodsmen, and the extraordinary, mind-boggling occurrences I've personally witnessed are undeniably unsettling. In numerous instances, the individuals appeared to mysteriously disappear without a trace, leaving search teams with minimal physical evidence or any indication of their whereabouts. It's like they vanished out of thin air, as if some mysterious, otherworldly power whisked them away. The few bodies that have been found were frequently discovered far from any expected route, in regions that had already been thoroughly explored. In 1959, there was a well-known incident involving the unfortunate deaths of Igor Dyatlov and Zenaida Kolmogorova, a married couple from Siberia. They were leading an experienced group of hikers through the remote Ural Mountains. What occurred afterward remains a mystery that is yet to be fully clarified. At some point, something must have really scared the whole group because they hastily tore through their tent, running out into a fierce Siberian blizzard without even stopping to put on proper clothes or shoes. After their ravaged corpses were eventually discovered, it was evident that there were inexplicable levels of radiation present. Some of the bodies had severe internal injuries and skull fractures, but there was no external evidence of trauma or animal attack. It seemed unlikely that a rational explanation would ever be found. The accounts describe a horrifying encounter that caused the seasoned outdoorsman to experience intense fear and instinctual panic. And that's the scariest part. Hidden within the far reaches of our planet, there might be unknown powers that our contemporary minds struggle to understand. Strange and otherworldly beings that challenge our comprehension of the physical world and its laws. There are creatures out there that target not only our bodies, but also our mental well-being and how we perceive the world. I am not sure what dark, insatiable force brought forth that unnamed, sharp-toothed creature in the dark forest. I have no interest in delving too deeply into where its ancient, corrupted psyche has now retreated. I am grateful for the remaining blessings in this delicate realm, as the ethereal divide between our worlds persists, at least for the time being. Thank you for taking the time to read. During the summer of 2018, I had the opportunity to be part of a search and rescue team that was sent to the San Juan National Forest in southwest Colorado. A hiker who was hiking alone was reported missing when they did not return from a trek that lasted several days. He was a seasoned adventurer in his mid-30s. Despite our best efforts over the past 2 days, we were unable to find any sign of the hiker who had gone missing. Teams with dogs, helicopters doing reconnaissance, and many searchers on the ground had not discovered anything. At the crack of dawn on the third day, my search partner and I embarked on an expedition to investigate an untouched, heavily wooded area. The landscape was incredibly challenging, featuring steep gorges and thick underbrush. After walking for a while, we stumbled upon a cozy spot by a babbling creek. The ground appeared to be quite damaged, and the vegetation was noticeably disturbed, suggesting that some sort of conflict or altercation had occurred. However, what was particularly disturbing was the hiker's backpack that had been completely destroyed, with his belongings strewn about. His sleeping bag had been torn apart, and the tent poles were completely broken. It appeared to be the result of an encounter with a bear or mountain lion, but there was an unsettling feeling that I couldn't quite identify. We reported our findings and GPS coordinates over the radio and started meticulously documenting and taking pictures of the scene. Upon inspecting the damaged backpack, I observed significant irregular claw marks that exceeded the size of those typically made by a bear. An unpleasant, repulsive smell permeated the atmosphere. As I was walking by the creek, I noticed a footprint in the mud. It was quite large, measuring around 18 inches in length. At first glance, it seemed almost human, but upon closer inspection, I noticed some peculiarities. The toes were unusually long, and there were some strange hook-like protrusions. I experienced an increasing feeling of unease. What's going on? What could possibly be the cause of this? More search teams arrived at our location to carry out a comprehensive search and gather evidence. However, no further indications of the hiker's whereabouts were discovered on that day or during subsequent search efforts. Up until now, his whereabouts remain unknown. The only hints are the eerie remains we discovered in that clearing in the woods. I have been involved in numerous search and rescue missions throughout my experience, a few of which have had unfortunate outcomes. However, this case continues to linger in my mind because of the unsettling scene we encountered and the numerous unanswered inquiries. I can't help but feel that there are mysterious entities hiding in the wild, defying any logical explanation. I sincerely hope that the hiker, no matter where he may be, has found peace. When I recently had a conversation with a volunteer who works in search and rescue, they told me a disturbing story that took place in a remote part of the Cascade Mountains in the state of Washington. When he recounted it, he was visibly shaken. and I could tell that it was something that continued to cause him a great deal of distress. Following some persuasion, he reluctantly divulged the following detail about the incident. In the month of August of the previous year, he was a member of a search operation that was looking for a group of hikers who had not returned from a trip into the backcountry. On the third day of the search, his team was searching through a valley that was miles away from the nearest trail and was covered in dense vegetation. It was a difficult terrain that was rarely traversed. In the late afternoon of that day, as the light was beginning to fade, he and his search dog came across a small clearing. When he saw what he saw there, his blood turned ice cold. Across the clearing, the shattered remains of the hikers who had gone missing were arranged in a manner that resembled dolls that had been broken. There were viscera and blood all over the place. What was most unsettling of all was the presence of a massive humanoid creature that was hovering over the gruesome scene. It was covered in fur that had become matted, as well as having a face that looked almost like a dog. Amber eyes that were filled with malevolence stared at him, and a low growl emanated from the creature's throat from its mouth. As the creature moved closer to him, my friend reported that he was overcome with a feeling of utter primal terror. Because he was terrified for his life, he grabbed his dog and ran through the woods at a breakneck pace. He did not stop until he reached the rest of his search team, which was located more than a mile away. What he saw, however, he never disclosed to them. He has never returned to that particular region of the mountains, and he has made it clear that he will not take part in any further searches in the backcountry. The idea that there are things hiding in the wilderness that cannot be explained, ancient beings that view us as prey, is something that he is absolutely certain of. It shook him to his very core with the experience. Regarding his story, I am unsure of what to make of it. On the other hand, I could see the genuine horror in his eyes as he described it. It was not a bear or a mountain lion that he was afraid of in those woods. Rather, it was something else that he was truly afraid of. More than anything else, it sounded like something out of our most ominous myths and legends. I can only hope that I will never have to deal with something like that in my own life. Just wanted to share that I'm a search and rescue volunteer in the beautiful Cascades of Washington State. In 2019, we were tasked with a mission to search for a solo hiker who had been reported overdue from a multi-day trip along a remote section of the Pacific Crest Trail. It was quite an intriguing situation. We had a total of 8 people, divided into 4 teams of 2 to maximize our coverage. Everything seemed perfect. The weather was ideal, everyone was in great shape, and the atmosphere was filled with positivity. I had no inkling of unease until darkness fell upon us that fateful night. My partner Tom and I decided to pitch our camp near a pass, nestled at an impressive elevation of 6,500 feet. The night sky was bathed in the soft glow of the moon. As we sat by the crackling fire, discussing our plans for the upcoming day, an eerie sound reverberated through the valley, catching us off guard. There was a peculiar sound that began softly and gradually increased in frequency, creating a mesmerizing ebb and flow. It's like hearing a haunting, otherworldly sound that resonates deep within you, a mesmerizing, ethereal hum that sends shivers down your spine. Tom and I exchanged a bewildered glance, our eyes filled with astonishment. Did anyone else hear that? Curiosity got the best of me. He gave a slow nod. As we sat there, a heavy silence enveloped us. Our ears tuned into the mysterious sound that seemed to originate from the very heart of the dense forest. After a brief period of around 3 minutes, the sound suddenly vanished just as suddenly as it had appeared. That night was definitely not conducive to a good night's sleep. Every night, without fail, the eerie sound would pierce through the darkness, echoing through the woods. For 4 consecutive days and nights, we tirelessly scoured the area, desperate to uncover the source of this mysterious phenomenon. No one else seemed to have noticed anything out of the ordinary. Could it have been an elusive creature of the night, one that remains unknown to us, or perhaps a peculiar auditory occurrence triggered by the unique landscape? Or, just maybe, something inexplicable and otherworldly? Still no sign of the elusive hiker. I can't help but ponder if that mysterious sound played a role in his vanishing. There's something about those nights spent alone in the vast wilderness that still gives me chills. The feeling of a primordial vibration running through the ancient trees is unforgettable. So, there was this incident that happened about 5 years ago. We received a call to help locate a family of 4 who had mysteriously disappeared while they were out car camping near Mount Baker. The onset of autumn brought about a swift change in the weather. When we finally arrived at their last known location, a bizarre blizzard had unexpectedly swept in, leaving behind nearly a foot of snow overnight. Amidst a blinding snowstorm, my search partner and I stumbled upon the eerie sight of the family's deserted campsite. It was a scene of chaos and disarray. The tent lay in ruins, crushed by the heavy snow, while their belongings were strewn about haphazardly as if they had hastily fled the scene. Curiously, no tracks were found leading away from the site. It's as if they mysteriously disappeared without a trace. While we combed the area, desperately calling out their names as if unseen eyes were fixed upon us, there I was, surrounded by the serene beauty of nature, when something peculiar caught my eye. Shadows darted and danced among the trees, defying the notion that we were alone in this remote location. There was this moment when I was absolutely convinced that I heard faint whispers and giggles emanating from a nearby cave. Intrigued, I mustered up the courage to explore the depths with my trusty flashlight, only to find it completely devoid of any signs of life. After 3 days of relentless searching, the decision was made to call off the search due to the deteriorating conditions. No trace of that family has ever been discovered. Those woods always bring back memories of them. There's no doubt in my mind that they experienced something truly bizarre. It seems that the truth will forever remain elusive. During one incident, in hopes of locating a fisherman who had gone missing, the clock struck midnight, with just a sliver of moonlight breaking through the thick blanket of clouds. As we ventured forth, our group fanned out in a strategic formation, methodically exploring the thick foliage that hugged the river's edge. There was this strange splashing sound that kept catching my attention, as if there was some mysterious entity gliding alongside us in the water. Initially, I dismissed it as possibly a beaver or river otter, but the rhythmic and deliberate nature of the splashing made me question if it was truly an animal. I brought it up with the others, but it seemed like I was the only one who noticed. As we continued along the shore, a mesmerizing pale blue light caught my attention. It flickered intermittently, almost as if it was inviting us to come closer and explore its mysterious source. I shouted out, inquiring if anyone else had witnessed the peculiar light, yet, once more, there was no reply from the team. As I cautiously approached, the light appeared to retreat, luring me away from the group and further into the dense foliage. As I became aware of the absence of my teammates' voices, the light suddenly disappeared and an eerie fog rolled in from the river, obscuring my vision completely. I began to experience a sense of disorientation, almost as if I were feeling dizzy. There was something eerie about the mist, as if it had a life of its own. It wrapped around me and causing a strange buzzing sensation in my mind. I recall desperately reaching out for assistance, yet it seemed as though the sound was inexplicably devoured by the dense fog. I vividly recall the moment when I found myself perched on the hood of one of our search and rescue vehicles, snugly wrapped in a cozy blanket, witnessing the breathtaking sight of the sun rising on the horizon. They found me, curled up under a tree on the brink of hypothermia, over a mile away from where I had strayed. I found myself in a perplexing situation, completely unaware of how I ended up there. It was a heartbreaking sight when the fisherman was found entangled in submerged branches, a clear and tragic accident. There's a night that has always left me with an eerie feeling, a night where I couldn't help but sense an otherworldly presence in that river valley. It was as if something was lurking in the mist, enticing unsuspecting victims towards their inevitable fate. I haven't signed up for a night search since then. It was the summer of 2017 when we got the call about a group of missing hikers near Mount Rainier. 3 college students had set out on a day hike, but failed to return to the trailhead by nightfall. Our team assembled quickly and headed out, hoping to locate them before the weather took a turn for the worse. As we combed the dense forest, calling out their names, an uncanny feeling crept over me. The air seemed unnaturally still and heavy, like a physical weight pressing down. The beam of my flashlight kept catching on odd shapes in the underbrush that vanished when I tried to focus on them. An irrational sense of being watched prickled the back of my neck. After hours of fruitless searching, we regrouped at base camp to wait for daylight. Snatches of static-riddled radio chatter and the hoot of a distant owl were the only sounds disturbing the eerie, pre-dawn silence. Uneasiness continued to churn in my gut. First light revealed a grim scene. At the base of a towering Douglas fir, we found a single hiking boot, torn pack, and a smear of dried blood, but no sign of the missing students. It was as if they had been plucked from the forest, leaving only these sinister traces behind. The hair stood up on my arms. An extensive search turned up no further clues to their fate. No tracks, broken branches, or cries for help. Nothing but that uncanny stillness and the crawling sense of unseen eyes in the shadows. Eventually, the search was called off and the students' disappearances went unexplained. I've participated in many searches over the years, but this is the one that still haunts me. Something about that night in those woods felt horribly wrong, a malevolent presence lurking just beyond the tree line. To this day, I avoid that area of the park, and I've never quite shaken the sick certainty that those students were taken by something unnatural. Here's the next story. Ready for it? I recently received an email from JB, a search and rescue volunteer in Utah. He described a series of strange events that occurred during a nighttime rescue operation in a remote wilderness area in October 2022. JB and his team were dispatched to locate a group of lost hikers. As they trekked through the dark forest, they observed a series of bright, erratically moving lights in the sky above the ridgeline. The lights would pulse and change colors from white to red to blue. At times, they appeared to be intelligently controlled, moving in formation. The team could not identify any known aircraft or natural phenomena that would explain the lights. As they continued their search, one team member glimpsed a large winged figure gliding above the tree line. He described it as having a humanoid body, elongated arms that connected to bat-like wings, and a wingspan of approximately 20 feet. The dark figure moved effortlessly and silently before disappearing from view. No other team members saw the figure. The strange events left the crew on edge, but they remained focused on locating the hikers. After several more hours, they successfully found the lost group and escorted them to safety. The hikers had not seen the lights or winged humanoid. JB reported the lights to local authorities, but did not mention the flying humanoid, fearing ridicule. He subsequently learned that another search and rescue team had experienced similar unexplained lights in the same general area in August 2022. JB and his team are experienced outdoorsmen and not prone to exaggeration or fantasy. The sightings left them shaken and without a rational explanation. They have not experienced anything unusual since, but remain perplexed by what they encountered that strange night in the Utah wilderness. Here's the next story. This occurred in Olympic National Park in Washington State in 2019. I was part of a search and rescue team looking for a group of 4 hikers who had failed to return from a backcountry trip. It was getting dark as we headed up the trail. The dense forest quickly swallowed the last remnants of daylight. We decided to split into 2 groups to cover more ground. I was with my partner Jim, an experienced ranger. We took off down a side trail, calling out the hikers' names. No response, only eerie silence and the occasional hoot of an owl. After about an hour, we stopped in a small clearing to get our bearings. Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream pierced the night. It sounded almost human, but not quite. More animal-like and guttural. We froze, exchanging startled looks. Jim clicked on his radio, but only static came through. That scream seemed to have come from the direction we were headed. Jim gestured for me to follow him as he crept forward, shining his flashlight at the dark underbrush. We entered a grove of massive ancient cedars. I had the unnerving feeling we were being watched. Without warning, something large crashed through the trees to our right and let out another unearthly shriek. We caught a glimpse of a dark, upright figure loping between the trunks. It looked to be at least 7 feet tall, covered in shaggy hair. That was enough for us. We turned and ran, adrenaline pumping, not stopping until we reached the main trail. Panting, we looked at each other in disbelief. Did we really just see what we thought we saw? We radioed the other team and told them we were heading back to the trailhead to regroup. Our priority was finding the lost hikers. But now, it felt like something else was out there too. Something that didn't want us in those woods. The next morning, after a sleepless night at base camp, we got word that the hikers had been located several miles from where we were searching. They were hungry and exhausted, but otherwise unharmed. They had no explanation for the screams we heard. And to be honest, I'm not sure I want to know. I've been doing search and rescue for a decade, but I've never experienced anything like that before. It's safe to say I'll be sticking to the well-traveled trails from now on. Note: Olympic National Park has a long history of Bigfoot activity and sightings. Perhaps this search and rescue team had a run-in with one that night. Fortunately, the hikers were found safe and sound. But this account is a good reminder for all of us that there are still many mysteries lurking in the wilderness. Stay alert and be prepared for anything out there. Also, wanted to include this before I ended this post. On a SAR mission in the Sierra Nevada mountains, my team was looking for a solo hiker who had disappeared near a remote alpine lake. As we approached the shore in the fading light, I noticed an unusual rippling on the otherwise mirror-calm surface. Suddenly, a large, dark shape broke the water. It was easily 20 feet long, with a serpentine body and what appeared to be humps on its back. It writhed and splashed for a few seconds before diving back down into the inky depths. My teammates were facing the other direction and missed it. When I told them what I saw, they looked at me skeptically. But I know what I witnessed that evening. The lost hiker turned up days later, miles away, with no memory of how he got there. He kept mumbling about a monster in the lake. I couldn't help but shudder. Another time, we were called out to search for a group of hunters who had gone missing in a canyon near the US-Mexico border. As we hiked down into the ravine, I felt an overwhelming sense of dread and unease. The air seemed heavy and oppressive, despite the hot desert wind. We discovered the hunters' abandoned camp along the dry creek bed. Their tents were shredded, supplies scattered everywhere, almost like something had ransacked the site in a fit of rage. But there were no tracks, animal or human. Just a strange, sulfurous odor lingering in the air. We fanned out to search the area. I climbed up to a rocky ledge and found myself face to face with what I can only describe as a portal or vortex. A shimmering, pulsating disk of energy hovering right in front of me. Tendrils of electricity seemed to arc around it. I could feel it pulling me in. Terrified, I scrambled back down to the others. We never found a trace of those hunters. A few guys claimed they heard disembodied screams and chants echoing through the canyon that day. I've tried to rationalize what I saw, but I've never been able to shake the feeling that there are some places humans were never meant to venture. The most unnerving experience happened when we were looking for a family who had disappeared while car camping in a remote part of the Ozarks. It was early morning when we reached their campsite deep in the woods. The first thing that struck me was the silence. No birds, no insects, nothing. Just a dead quiet. Their SUV was parked at an odd angle, doors flung open. As I approached the vehicle, I saw that the interior was completely coated in a translucent, foul-smelling slime. It was like the consistency of mucus and seemed to be pulsating. There were strange symbols etched into the ooze, some language I've never seen before. The family's gear was still arranged around the dead campfire, untouched, but they had vanished without any tracks or clues. We searched for a week and never found a single trace, other than that goo in their car. I took samples of the substance to several labs, but no one could identify it. It seemed to break down and evaporate within hours of being collected. Just touching it made me violently ill for days after. Maybe it's better that we don't know what happened to that poor family, but I suspect it was nothing of this earth. There are things out there in the wilderness that defy explanation, phenomena that challenge our understanding of reality. When you're on a search and rescue team, you see sides of nature that most can't even imagine. These are just a few of the hair-raising, unexplainable events I've witnessed in my time, and I'm certain there will be more. You learn to keep an open mind, because out there, anything is possible. In the dense woodlands of the Pacific Northwest, during the late summer of 1987, a harrowing search and rescue mission unfolded that has since become the stuff of local legend. I was part of the search team, and what we encountered in those woods goes beyond the comprehension of our everyday lives. This is the account of our encounter with the unknown during a routine search operation. The incident occurred in a remote section of the Cascade Mountains, where the terrain is rugged and unforgiving. A young boy, aged 12, had gone missing from a family camping site. The family, distraught and panicked, had last seen him playing near a creek that afternoon. When darkness fell and there was no sign of him, they alerted the authorities, and by the next morning, a full-fledged search and rescue operation was underway. Our team was briefed at dawn, and we set out with the hope of finding the boy by midday. The forest was thick with underbrush, and the sound of our footsteps was muffled by the dense carpet of fallen leaves. As we called out the boy's name, our voices seemed to be swallowed by the vastness of the wilderness. Hours passed with no sign of him, and a sense of urgency began to build. In the early afternoon, as we were making our way through a particularly dense thicket, we heard what sounded like faint cries for help. Quickening our pace, we moved toward the sound, calling out reassurances that help was on the way. The cries grew louder, guiding us to a small clearing where the scene before us was one of confusion and fear. There, lying at the base of a large old fir tree, was the missing boy, but he was not alone. Hovering above him was a figure so bizarre and unexpected that it stopped us in our tracks. It was humanoid in shape, but its skin appeared translucent, shimmering with an otherworldly glow. Its eyes were wide and unblinking, reflecting a light that seemed to emanate from within. For a moment, we all stood frozen, unsure of how to react. The figure turned its gaze toward us, and in that instant, the atmosphere in the clearing changed. The air became charged with an energy that was palpable, and a sense of calm descended upon us. Without a word, the figure receded into the forest, disappearing from view as mysteriously as it had appeared. Rushing to the boy's side, we found him unharmed, but in a state of shock. He spoke of following a shimmering light into the forest, captivated by its beauty. The light, he said, had kept him safe through the night, warding off the darkness and the fear. The return journey was a blur of emotion, relief at the boy's safety mingling with our collective bewilderment at what we had witnessed. Back at the campsite, the boy was reunited with his family, and the search team debriefed in hushed tones about the encounter. To this day, the nature of the being we encountered in that clearing remains a mystery. Some say it was a guardian spirit of the forest, while others speculate about extraterrestrial guardianship. Whatever the truth may be, the incident has left an indelible mark on all who were present, a reminder of the unexplained mysteries that lie hidden in the wild places of the world. The boy went on to lead a normal life, but the experience remained with him, a tale of wonder and fear to be told around campfires. As for the search and rescue team, we were left with more questions than answers, a sense of awe at the vast, mysterious world that exists just beyond the bounds of our understanding. Throughout my extensive search and rescue career in the remote wilderness of the San Juans, I have never encountered anything quite as extraordinary. In the midst of October, the frigid embrace of winter began to tighten its grip on the high country. The aspens shimmered with a golden hue, while the highest peaks were adorned with delicate dustings of snow. As the sun disappeared behind the jagged ridgeline, we received a call to venture into the mountains near Lizard Head Pass in search of a solo hiker who was overdue. I had the privilege of being paired with Mike and John, two experienced SR veterans just like me. Throughout our journey, we've encountered a wide range of challenging missions, from daring avalanche rescues to the grim task of searching for murder victims. Little did we anticipate the eerie occurrence that lay in store for us that fateful evening. With our backpacks weighing us down, we embarked on the Ice Lakes Trail, surrounded by a breathtaking display of stars. Our headlamps illuminated the dark forest, creating a mesmerizing dance of light. There was a distinct, icy bite in the air. We watched as puffs of breath lingered in the air before us. As we ventured through the icy terrain, the only sounds that reached our ears were the satisfying crunch of our boots and the distant hoots of an owl, adding an eerie touch to the atmosphere. And then, after enduring 4 long miles, it happened. The piercing cry that shattered the stillness of the night sent chills down my spine, reverberating through the canyon with an otherworldly power. Beside me, John suddenly halted, his eyes filled with astonishment. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. his voice filled with a sense of urgency. I let out a startled gasp, feeling the hairs on my neck stand on end. There was this eerie howl that echoed through the air, resembling a strange blend of a wolf's haunting call and a man's anguished scream. Yet, there was something unsettlingly unnatural about it, almost as if it had a metallic undertone. There was something peculiar about it, as if it originated from a cluster of twisted spruce trees just a short distance away from the path. Against all my better judgment, I couldn't resist the temptation to venture into the dark woods and unravel the mystery behind those eerie sounds. As I gazed into the mysterious, darkened trees, an unsettling sensation washed over me. It was as if an otherworldly presence was observing us, a presence that existed beyond the realm of the ordinary. I quickly motioned to Mike and John, urging them to continue on. It would be ideal to locate the missing hiker as soon as possible and swiftly depart from that place. As we continued forward, an unsettling silence enveloped us, our ears on high alert for any sign of what had produced that bone-chilling howl. Something strange had befallen the wilderness, causing an unsettling silence to descend upon it, as if even the nocturnal creatures were too afraid to utter a sound. I could feel my heart pounding against my chest, while a chilling sweat covered my forehead, even in the freezing cold. With my hand hovering near the bear spray on my belt, I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. It was clear that the source of that otherworldly cry was something far beyond what I could handle. After a few more intense miles, we eventually found the missing hiker tucked away in his tent just off the trail. He was suffering from hypothermia and disorientation, but thankfully, he was still alive. There was a noticeable change in his complexion when we brought up the sound of the howl, indicating that he was familiar with it as well. I could hear this terrifying scream, as if someone was being violently assaulted, he murmured, his teeth chattering uncontrollably. But when I shouted, my voice seemed to vanish into the depths of the forest. As we hurriedly worked to warm him up and prepare him for our next move, I divulged the limited information we had regarding the spine-chilling sound. Despite our attempts to rationalize the situation, a nagging feeling in the pit of my stomach told me otherwise. After countless hours immersed in the untamed wilderness, I've become attuned to the unique symphony of the great outdoors. There was definitely something unique about this, a mysterious and unsettling occurrence. As the sun began to rise, casting a gentle glow through the towering pines, we successfully reached the trailhead by daybreak. It was such a relief when the tension in my shoulders finally eased away. The haunting sound of that howl continued to echo in my mind, long after weeks had passed. It's truly unsettling to think about how, despite all the time I've spent in the untamed wilderness, there are still mysterious entities that hide in the desolate corners of our planet, completely defying any logical explanation. That cry I heard in the San Juans was truly one of a kind. Honestly, I really hope I never experienced that. After countless years of venturing into the depths of untamed landscapes, I've come to realize that the mountains hold a multitude of enigmatic mysteries that are best left untouched. I can't help but still question the nature of reality to this day, thanks to an incident that happened the previous summer. Received a call regarding an experienced backpacker who didn't make it back from a solo trek. His wife was filled with worry after 2 days of silence. We arrived at our destination at the crack of dawn, landing in a picturesque meadow surrounded by majestic mountains. According to the man's itinerary, he had quite the adventure planned. He intended to navigate a precarious knife-edge ridgeline and then make his way down into the secluded valleys on the other side. Unforgiving landscape, even in optimal circumstances, As we ventured up into a secluded valley, still cloaked in the cool embrace of the morning, an eerie sense of being under scrutiny lingered in the air. I could feel the hairs on my arms standing on end, even through the fabric of my jacket. I couldn't help but flinch at every sudden movement in my peripheral vision. There was something about the gravity of our mission that kept me on edge, as if some deep-rooted instinct was urging me to stay vigilant. As we made our way to the ridgeline, constantly battered by strong gusts of wind, the sheer drops on either side were over 1,000 feet, creating an awe-inspiring sight. We found ourselves maneuvering in a low, crouched position, occasionally resorting to crawling on all fours. So there I was, cruising along in first place, when out of the corner of my eye, I caught a glimpse of something peculiar. There's something intriguing about a vibrant piece of fabric caught on a twisted branch jutting out from the cliffside beneath the ridge. I felt a sinking sensation in my stomach when I realized it was a tent fly. I shouted out, convinced that the backpacker might have fallen from the ridge and was now lying injured down below. Yet, the only response came from the howling wind. Feeling a mix of excitement and unease, I began setting up an anchor to descend and retrieve the fabric. Suddenly, Mike, who was at the back, started shouting. I turned quickly to find him gesturing urgently down the mountainside. Down below, at a depth of 2,000 feet, a curious sight unfolded. A tiny figure stumbled through a rocky talus field, frantically waving its arms. Could it be the hiker we've been searching for? There was an undeniable sense of strangeness, even from afar. There was something peculiar about the way they moved, as if they were controlled by invisible strings. It was quite a sight to behold, as he seemed to be clad in nothing but his undergarments. We were left completely speechless for what felt like an eternity. It was an unmistakable sight, a figure that appeared before our eyes. However, it seemed highly unlikely that he could have traveled such a vast distance, descended so rapidly, all within a matter of minutes. Wow, he looked really beaten up. This phenomenon completely defied the laws of physics. Mike dashed down the mountain with a sense of urgency, determined to catch up with the hiker. Dom followed closely behind, matching Mike's speed. So there I was, just chilling in a helicopter, ready to give some guidance. I found it impossible to look away from that pitiful, bare-legged figure. After taking a few unsteady steps, he suddenly vanished from view as he tumbled into a deep gully. After a 20-minute search, Mike and Dom thoroughly combed through the talus field. It was as if the hiker, assuming that's what we witnessed, had mysteriously disappeared. There was only a single set of tracks, abruptly ending in a muddy seep. As I descended to retrieve the fly after the search was called off, my unease grew even stronger. Turns out, what I initially mistook for a tent fly turned out to be a parka. Found the parka of the missing hiker, complete with his driver's license securely tucked in the breast pocket. The object was forcefully ripped off the shoulders, as if it had been torn away by an immense and mysterious power. However, the jacket was in impeccable condition, which sharply contrasted with the hiker's disheveled look. No trace of that man was ever found. There's absolutely no trace to follow except for his jacket. There's something about this case that continues to haunt me, causing me to lose sleep as I try to unravel the truth of what transpired. After years of experience, I've come to understand that the human mind is capable of some truly perplexing illusions. But can you believe it? 3 seasoned SR personnel all experiencing the exact same hallucination at once seems highly improbable. It's still mind-boggling to me that we might have experienced something that defies all logic and reason. Remember that search in the La Garita wilderness 3 years ago? It's still baffling how those 2 hunters disappeared without a single clue. We spent a significant amount of time thoroughly exploring that basin. We brought in cadaver dogs, helicopters equipped with infrared, and all the necessary resources. There was no trace left behind, not even a single footprint. They seemed to have disappeared without a trace. However, what truly bothered me was what happened on the third day of the search, as I found a moment of respite on the banks of this serene alpine stream. I couldn't help but be captivated by the dogs diligently going about their business downstream. Out of nowhere, a mysterious object emerged from the dense foliage on the opposite side. It landed with a splash just a few feet away from me. So, get this, I stumbled upon a bone. But not just any bone. It was a femur. Behold, a human femur. Its once vibrant hues faded by the relentless sun, and its surface marked by the passage of time. Seemingly a leftover from a previous season, even though it was not present earlier in the day. So here's the deal. The conclusion, where it would connect to the hip bone. It was completely severed. The object doesn't show any signs of being splintered or gnawed, which is unusual if an animal had been involved. However, it was severed with an uncanny level of precision that resembled a surgical procedure. I searched diligently for any trace of the remaining skeleton, or any hints as to how it ended up being forcefully thrown from the foliage. Yet again, there was no sign of anything. Found this mysterious bone randomly thrown from the shadows, no idea where it came from. There was an eerie sense of the wilderness mocking our presence. It made it clear that it would never reveal its secrets, no matter how hard we tried to uncover them. It's quite fascinating when you see it all laid out like this. If someone else approached me with these stories, I would likely question their sanity. There's a certain understanding among us, a shared bond that comes from experiencing the unexplainable. These stories, they're not meant for just anyone. We keep them close, sharing them only with those who have walked the same path as us in search of the unknown. When it comes to our line of work, we are often required to rely on solid evidence and logical reasoning. It's important to stay grounded and focus on reality. After venturing into the untamed wilderness, those uncharted territories that defy conventional understanding, it's hard to imagine anyone not being profoundly transformed. It's fascinating how we tend to hold tightly onto the neat and predictable version of reality that we create within the boundaries of our civilized world. There have been some truly mind-boggling encounters and experiences that have left me pondering the boundaries of what we believe to be possible. It's truly fascinating how there are countless mysteries in our world that continue to elude our understanding. Immersive landscapes of untamed wilderness, where the forces of nature reign supreme and humans find themselves in unfamiliar territory. Out in those remote locations, where the incessant buzzing of cell phones and the comforting illumination of streetlights are absent, it seems that the boundary between reality and the inexplicable becomes increasingly tenuous. But one thing that's not tenuous is making sure you hit that like and subscribe button for more content from yours truly, especially if you're wanting to hear more eyewitness accounts and even secondhand accounts of just strange, bizarre, supernatural things happening in our forests, national parks, whatever it is, you name it, I'm the place for that. So be sure to check that out and be sure to follow me. And most importantly, I'll see you all in the very next video. Thank you so much.